Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Today we're going to go all the way to Vegas, Sin City, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, you name it, they've been called it. But you know what? Some great things comes out of Vegas. So we're going to go back a little bit. We're gonna go into the Super Bowl. I know the Super Bowl's over, but not just the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about that event, that halftime event that really took the social media by storm. Let me tell you where we're going with this particular episode. This young lady that's coming on the show went viral with a comment and her thoughts on what her take was on the Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar. I'm going to tell you what I thought about it. And I had a friend that worked there with the Super Bowl halftime event. And I was I wasn't dumbfounded. Let me put it like this. I wasn't dumbfounded by any means. What I was I got validation. Thank you. That was a download. I got validation for what I already knew. And what I mean by that is that particular performance might have went over the head of most individuals. And for some individuals, let me use this word a lot of people are now using, awakening. They saw what was going on. But it's nothing new. It's always there because the firm belief is darkness cannot hide light or the truth. It was just amazing that this individual, one of the, let's call it what it is. He's a great entertainer. He's a great artist. And it clearly showed by watching that Super Bowl. So let's go back a minute. This lady's outtake or outlook on that whole thing kind of went viral on TikTok. We're blessed to have her on our show to give her perspective and the reactions that she was getting from the post. I'd like to welcome all the way from Vegas, Tess Davis, to the show. What's up, baby girl?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor having you. I mean, very seldom we get individuals that have, I won't call it controversy, but have taken something and really allow people to say their viewpoint on a topic that was seen all over the world. So before we get there in that post and your take on it, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Well, I grew up in Vegas, native of Vegas, and highly empathic. And what's interesting is late in life, at the age of 59, I was diagnosed autism and ADHD, which is part of what I talk about on TikTok. Mm-hmm. And it's also the hypocrisy that I've always felt for my generation of boomers and Gen Xers, older Gen Xers, white hypocrisy. And raised in a city that has always been a melting pot of diversity. Mm-hmm. I grew up in just this time in this space where I just saw people. I saw people, and I don't want to say this color thing, but that's never what resonated with me. It mm-hmm. was the kindness and openness between human connection. Mm-hmm. So it never had anything to do with this stuff, which is, I always refer to it, our skin color. It actually goes back to how we treat each other. Mm-hmm. And growing up here, I have seen it all. I mean, through the times of the mob controlling Las Vegas, the stories that I have are just hilarious, but really seeing the transformation of a city that was segregated, that was this molded vision mm-hmm. that the US really, the world doesn't really have that intake of what Las Vegas truly represented. And now Now I believe it's even more filled with this white hypocrisy because it's so hell bent on um, what we're witnessing right now, which is the control of corporate control
Hmm.
that's now affecting all of us. And that's what's really hard, is because I'm seeing segments of society just being targeted. And that's part of always calling out the BS that I see. We've got to stop this viewpoint that is being crammed down everybody's throats right now with such divisiveness. And that's where I stand. I've been an activist. I have done that my entire life. I mentor young women, homeless groups here in Las Vegas, and I just am the message of, we see you, I see you. And not only do I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and I'm at this point where I want to get the message. I am you, you are me, we are one. We are one. And
Hmm.
this is where I want to mold this into this passion that I have, that this hatred and racism, it's got to stop. And being from a city that I've seen shift, it breaks my heart, because that's not what I grew up in, but this is what I'm seeing more and more out there.
It is so funny you mentioned you mentioned Vegas, but um, I grew up and I really, as a young child, I never really knew anything about Vegas, no more than what you saw on TV, mob control, and this is where you go to, they bury you out in the desert, and but you said something that was really profound here: the segregation of Vegas. It's funny that it's funny because we live in a world now where we can basically put your address in and see your house, see your surroundings, everything. That wasn't available back then. So it makes me wonder, what other cities, what other states, what other little small rural towns have dealt with and is still dealing with this diversity. How many silent voices have not been heard? I mean, I remember when Oprah Winfrey went to Forsyth, Georgia. Well, hell, I wasn't born that far from Forsyth, Georgia. I remember not being able to go through these little towns and so forth because I was a colored man. I get hung. They were still hanging people back then, but it wasn't as polarized now. But you mentioned something about Vegas being, segregated. Tell me about that, because I had no idea.
Well, so in Vegas, there was an area in Vegas that was specifically called the West Side, and so that you have to think on how large Vegas is now, and now you just have to go in a microscopic thing. So the area that I grew up in was, of course, it was middle class white, but there was a segment of Las Vegas that was called the West Side, and the West Side is basically where most of our Black and brown brothers, sisters lived.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, though, is because it's no longer the West Side, because the West Side of Vegas goes far west.
Mm-hmm.
But us locals, we know what that means, if you grew up on the West Side. What's interesting, though, is there's two things that I just think are really important to share here with where my mind went. Back in the 60s, when my parents came here, my father was a liquor salesman, and he was assigned to the West Side. He was assigned where all the businesses, the bars and what have you, that were owned by Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my dad, white man, and he is now assigned this territory. Well, lo and behold, several years into being the salesman in this area, my dad was kicking ass, and he made friends out there. He could come and go, and he had friendships. He had business relationships. So it was like in the mid 70s or so, his bosses were like, we need to get someone else in there. Of course, they want to get like a white dude, like one of their sons, like someone they know,
Mm-hmm.
over in Jim's territory. Because see, Jim's kicking ass.
Mm-hmm.
It's all commission. Well, that didn't go well, because my dad really had friendships and relationships out there. It took years for this man to come in and build trust and build relationships. And I can remember being a small girl on Saturdays. He'd have to go make a sales call or what have you. And sometimes I could go in if it was a restaurant. Sometimes I couldn't if it was a bar. But they loved my dad. And when they tried to bring in other salespeople, the community was like, no, we're only going to give our orders to Jim. Mm-hmm. So this was like my first, like, it didn't sink in. But in hindsight, I go, oh, look at that. Look at that. Because it was not taught to me to hate other people because of their color. Mm-hmm. And then there's another video that I did that went crazy. And it was my experience as a third grader. Because at the time they would take from the West Side, they would bus in our Black and brown brothers and sisters into the white areas of Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And so one of my friends, I've been looking for her. Her name is Vicky. And Vicky and I were good friends. And she loved my long hair. And I loved her hair with all the braids and the barrettes. And we would, at lunchtime or recess time, we'd sit out there and we'd play. But I can't tell you, we would sit there and we'd touch each other's hair because we were just so amazed. Like, that's really cool. And so I invited Vicky to my my birthday party in third grade. And the doorbell rang. And my sister said, Tessie, there's, someone's here. And it was Vicky. So Vicky and I hug and scream, and she can hear everybody in the backyard. And so Vicky runs out in the back, and her mom stops me. And this is so profound for me. And this is why I want to share it, because I was still oblivious to this stuff. Mm-hmm. And she kneeled down in front of me. And I'm telling you, Mama's face was 12 inches from eye to eye. And she said to me, thank you so much for inviting Vicky to your birthday party. This is her first white girls party that she's ever been invited to.
Wow.
And watching the tears build in her mom's eyes is still like a picture. I can see it right now. Mm-hmm. And I can feel it still to this day. I did not understand it. It was shocking, but I could tell the depth from this woman's soul, where this was coming from. And of course, now in hindsight, and I'm thinking, wow, it was so profound, but I didn't understand it at 8 years old or 9 years old or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But today I do. And to me, this is where I look at this and go, it didn't occur to me back then. And I've always thought, when does this hit people? When does this actually hit people that we are so divisive because of the color of our skin? I was so excited just to have Vicky mm-hmm. at my birthday party, and then seeing her mom's facial expression and what her words said to me, it has stuck with me for life. And since then, it breaks my heart when I see where we are and how worse it's gotten, how worse it has gotten since Obama was elected. I can remember Rush Limbaugh saying, I'd rather see the U.S. crash and burn than to see a Black man succeed as a president. This is this mindset that just blows me away, that this is this mentality. And that's why I call out this white boomer Gen Xer mentality, is because this is the essence of what needs to be broken in this country. Is this mentality of just this viewpoint. I know it is so strong because of my generation. And
what is the mindset? What is the mindset, and how did that mindset for these two generations to occur? Does it have to do with media propaganda? What's your take on that? Because
I
remember, we didn't have social media. We had the newspaper controlling the narrative, and we had the news controlling the narrative. It wasn't until the involvement of mobile devices, the way to connect with one country and the next country, that I don't even think things changed. I'm gonna be honest. Now that I look at it, I think what happens is it became more polarized and more acceptable. But the ideal of now seeing it and not doing anything about it, almost like the George Floyd thing. You see this stuff happening, but you're standing by in awe. And but go back to my question with you. What is the difference? How do you think the two generations form their ideology and way of thinking?
Well, I'll be honest. We could go down this slippery slope, this rabbit hole. Personally, I believe that one, boomers and Gen Xers are highly undiagnosed with autism and ADHD on the spectrum. That's my one thing. And because when you are on the spectrum, you have a tunnel vision. You have things, it's hard to really have the emotional connection and the emotional wherewithal. That's one thing. The other thing is I think that we come from a generation, and I, was severely traumatized as a child, extremely abused, So we've got this thing over here where we've got unresolved trauma, we've got unresolved childhood trauma. And when you mix the two of these together, it creates this mindset of lack of control, the level of repressed anger. And what's interesting is growing up in this town, a lot of my friends were, a lot of them are white. But what I found out when Obama ran and all of that, it blew my mind because they were all saying, well, I'm not racist, but I don't want this guy. Well, give me the reasons why on this guy. And they could not. So on a generational basis, I truly believe that this is just this mindset that they don't have the emotional wherewithal or the capacity to critical thinking. There's not a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And then when you think about where they came from, it was really ingrained in us to hit this grind and do this and do that. And now all of a sudden we have a lot of the fear-based, this victim mindset. Like, if I can do it, you can do it, but they're not taking into account any childhood traumas. They're not taking into account autism or anything because we did not have those conversations growing up. So you get stuck in this mindset of this whiteness where, wait a minute, it's the true thing. Wait a minute, everybody is getting this, this, and this, and this. What about me? The white victim mentality is rampant out there. And I keep saying this fear-based process where what about meism is from my generation. And if you look at the parent alienation that's happening, that's an epidemic that's happening out there right now. Our millennials and our Gen Zers are pulling away from Gen X and boomers because we can't see eye to eye. And Gen Z and boomers were not raised with boundaries. You could just do and say whatever you wanted, and there was no repercussions. And that's what this administration he released on the first go around is he opened Pandora's box. He gave everybody the level of entitlement to show what they've been suppressed. And that's so much anger, that's so much resentment in this country and the fear-based. And if you look at statistics right now, the number one group that's getting their bachelor's and master's and PhDs, young Black women. Now, if that doesn't scare the bejesus out of insecure white people, I don't think you're paying attention out there. because this is truly a time in history where we are seeing the reality of what we came from that is so fear-based on losing what they think they built. White didn't build this country. This is the melting pot of what created this country.
Well,
But this entitlement?
it's funny that you said that. I wasn't trying to cut you off. It's funny that you said that because we talked about this on several other episodes. The entitlement situation. And I tell people you have to be able to be a critical thinker and not a fear-based thinker to understand that all of this entitlement stems from I tell people you have to go back to the word white in general. First of all, understand where it came from. It didn't surface until the 1600 made law in the 1700. When it became law, it also became a controlling factor, and it also became what is called an entitlement factor. But it was only an entitlement factor because the word white was put into law, with every other classifications of people being what we call monetized, with black being at the bottom of the totem pole. So let's go back a minute to what you was talking about. How is this being inserted into the mainstream? You talked about childhood trauma. We'll get into that in a second. I was under the impression that Vegas was supposed to be a GI military stop on the way to California and so forth. I'm thinking that most of the people that actually came into Vegas during this time of insertion of people, that a lot of these individuals were military based people, which means they came from all over the region and settled there. You can answer that question, because I'm thinking a lot of this, because if this was the case, you're going to have a whole bunch of different mindsets in the way people think, the way they approach. And even, let's say, even if it was Vegas started out as a military post, to stop for GIs to whatever, you're still dealing with the bigger factor that you still had a racial problem even in the military. Even if that was a place, you still had deep mindsets, deep segregation that transform into the kids. So let's move forward with you for instance. What was, you mentioned you suffered the childhood traumas deeply. What was those traumas? And was Vegas, like I said, was it a melting pot of different mindsets, different ideas, different culture values?
Well, so growing up here, for instance, I did not know anyone that was associated with Nellis Air Force Base. No military, because it was its own little section out there, and it was just not part of our interactions with friendships, because they had schools out there where kids went to school.
So they went to school on base. They went to school on base.
Right. So growing up here, I think what it started was truly, it was about the hotels and the casinos, and then you had the Rat Pack. You had all of the Frank Sinatra's and Sammy Davis Jr. shows. This is what it was. And so people saw opportunity in Vegas. That's what brought our melting pot here, was the opportunities that people saw. And of course, from that's how the mob got involved, because what a great way to launder your money and run your girls and all of that. It was Vegas. It was 24/7. But outside of that, we had a community. We had a very, very close knit community. That's why this racism that I see with people that I grew up with, that I've known since 3 and 4 and 5 years old, I'm just shocked that this is their mindset. But the reason that it is because it comes then from my parents' generation. See, that was instilled in them. And this is where this generational thing comes from. So was my trauma associated with growing up in Las Vegas? Hell no. It was being raised, where I basically raised myself. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. But now I can look back and go, holy smokes, my dad was OCD. My mom was this. I can now pinpoint all of my brothers and sisters and go, do you know why I know our generations is undiagnosed? Because I can look at my own family. And then I can look at my friendships and go, oh my gosh, I can remember standing in so-and-so's house and watching their father come home in a tirade screaming about, people of color, and going, oh, okay, now I remember their abuses. I remember their traumatized households. I remember things that were said that I'm going, wow, well, that doesn't sit well with me. Okay. So this is this beauty about what I'm seeing with coming out, I say, of being autistic, is because it's my pattern recognition. And I'm looking at patterns that we are just now seeing. There are so many great younger doctors out there, especially on TikTok, that are actually coming forth and talking about pattern recognition, especially when it comes to racism, because I can look at my own family, I can look at my friends, and now I can step back and go, oh, this is all making sense. To think that, especially from boomers and older Gen X, to have them align who they are as a human being so intensely with a political party, and that's where they're stuck. So when you see all of these people that are voting this horrific regime into office, I'll tell you right now, the ones that I know, they're stuck in this mindset. I identify as a Republican, and I'm just going to stay here, regardless if everything that they're doing goes against my moral code. And as a white person, it's almost like this badge of honor. I'm going to stay here, even though it goes against my moral code. Oh my gosh, even if it goes against the fact that my granddaughter, her daddy is Black, it doesn't matter. This is the hypocrisy of this stuff, because they can't think past, and they don't have those critical thinking skills, and they can't think past their own traumas. They can't think past, because they don't even know that they're autistic, and they don't even realize that all of these biases that they were raised within are being debunked now.
Yeah.
And so where we come from, what's ingrained in our DNA, that's another big thing. What's in our DNA? And that was a portion of my video that I did regarding Kendrick, because white people say, oh, we've been through so much, and I'm sorry, it's in our DNA. And when you look at the history of our Black and brown brothers and sisters out there, I'm sorry, but the trauma is nowhere near this stuff. And that is where it's not a simple answer anymore, because my generation and Gen Xers are holding back intelligence. They want us to stay. What's his big thing? I like the uneducated. He knows how uneducated and how emotionally detached this group is, and he honed in on it. And when you've got far right shows that are pushing this and pushing this, it's this thing. It's stuck in their mind. It's easy to understand why it's been tagged and identified by top scholars as a cult, because they can't break those cycles. This is a trauma bond. This is a toxic bond that they have. And when you come from a toxic trauma household, you connect to what is familiar to you. So when you have this man who everybody idolizes, and he says what we've been told not to say, but he's getting away with it, this is the familiar. I can't tell you how many white people I know that I remember those conversations and go, oh my gosh. But that's where your brain is wired as a child. You're going to connect to what is familiar. And if your familiar is racial slurs, then by God, it's wired. if your familiar is abuse, then by God, there's going to be abuse in that family.
Mm-hmm.
This is the generational trauma that I talk about, because these are the patterns that need to be broken. But here we've got young adults that are breaking it because they're stepping back and they're looking at their parents and their grandparents and they're going, wait 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends that are of all different colors from all different places,
Right.
and they treat me wonderfully.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't treat me wonderfully? My own family. My own family doesn't treat me the way my friendships do. So this is this process that I'm watching out there of older people, boomers and Gen Xers, that it's being put in their face and they don't like it. They don't like what they feel.
It's funny that you said that, because I'm a firm believer that generational data resonates, but there's always that aha moment that you go, this isn't right. And then you mentioned something else that I see happening with that generation too. It's the fear base, because it's been so deeply embedded in them that the inability to be a critical thinker doesn't even exist. So you, like you said, you resonate with familiarity here. So let's move forward a little bit here. You said one word that I thought was really cool: parent alienation, because it starts with the kids.
Yep.
And I have not used that word in a while. And I see it so much with parent alienation, where the kid or the children become traumatized with the belief structure of two individuals, two parents, that the child now is forced to figure out which one is best, but they don't have the capabilities to do it.
Right. And what's interesting, because I do somatic work, I do all kinds of different care sessions with people. And I went through some training with Dr. Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, and these are like our top three. They're like the grandfathers of childhood trauma. So I was in a 7-day course with them last year, and I just have to say, because I have my gift of gab, I always made sure that I went. I like to talk to younger people. I want to know what's going on in their heart and their feelings, and it just shocked me, because there had to have been at least a half a dozen young women that I spoke to. Yeah, I haven't talked to my mom in 9 years. Oh, I haven't seen my dad in 15. And so why is that? Is because our youth are saying, I want boundaries. You don't respect me. You treated me like crap. I'm doing my self work. I'm doing my healing. And that right there, when I started really going down that rabbit hole of parent alienation, it's because boomers and Gen Xers, they don't want to be held accountable. They do not want to be held accountable. And what is a trait of autism? Lack of accountability. Am I blaming or pushing this through autism? No, because not everyone is autistic. But when you start to look at things and the similarities and the patterns, this is where I know in my own family, for instance, how I watched my nephews and nieces get raised by their parents that are truly undiagnosed on the spectrum. And so when we have this divisiveness that's still going on, it is so generationally ingrained, because it is that familiar. And our youth, they're trying to rewire what they went through, and they're doing a really good job because they've got critical thinking. I'm watching them raise their children with a vocabulary where kids are helping them define words with emotions. And that's why I'm always saying our youth, yeah, they're going to change this, but we're stuck. It's like you can go to this matrix thing. We're stuck. We're stuck because there's still so many of us older people that haven't transitioned into human decency. Because in my opinion, just mine, there's not a lot of human decency happening out there in the world. And if you look at the Karens and the Kens of the world out there being so entitled, it just it infuriates me that they are reducing a human being to what their belief system is. And that to me is not what our youth is doing. Our youth is actually looking at life and saying, I like this person. I'm going to date this person. I'm going to have children with this person. And that person doesn't look like me, but that person feels good with me. That person respects me. And a lot of these kids and these young adults are saying, my own parents and siblings don't respect me. And that's a hard thing for my generation to wrap their head around because they're control freaks.
Let's move forward with this before we wrap up. The Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl thing got a lot of attention, and you basically spoke your opinion because that's what you do on social media. You cover a wide range of topics that resonate with you. And I tell people, social media is about expression. You don't have to agree with everything people say on social media, but at least have the ability to at least listen. You never know. It might open up a aha moment in your life. So let's move forward with the Kendrick Lamar thing. What was your take on it? Why did you feel the need to address it? And then what were some of the things that people were saying with your thought?
Well, so I was excited to know that he was going to be doing the halftime because I knew who he was. I had listened to some of his music, but it's not my big genre of music because, I'm more from 70s and 80s. So, but I was excited to see what he was going to do because I did have enough knowledge on who he was and the controversies and all of that. But like I have mentioned, there was so much on the screen. My ADHD, I'm trying to listen to the lyrics. I'm reading the lyrics. I'm watching the movement. I'm watching the different things going on the screen. It felt so intense for me. And it wasn't in that particular moment because when it stopped, I was like, oh gosh, I need to dig into this because I know there's symbolisms in there that I didn't catch. I know that I was so excited to watch this over here and listen to the lyrics over there. And it took me a couple days to really go in because people were chiming in. And once I really went back from segment to segment and what this meant and what that meant and the symbolism, the genius, and this is where I think I put that in there. He's a genius in his performance. But I know as a white boomer, it went over the majority of everybody's head because in many ways it went over mine. But I knew it was important for me to understand what the message was. And so when I went back and really started researching and listening to the lyrics, there were times where I would just sit there and cry because, my gosh, we're still in this place in society. And when I came forth and did this video, I became so emotional because I was so proud. I'm so proud of our youth taking a stand against my generation to try to wake everybody up. Like, yeah, we have got to come together. And when I realized what I witnessed, and I can't tell you how many times I rewatched that show, it just hit me so hard. And I did become emotional in my video on TikTok because it goes back to, I believe we all want to be seen, heard, and valued. That's human nature. And right now, we're dismissing segments of our society that don't look like me. We're literally getting rid of DEI. I mean, what is happening is just, it's the ultimate of hypocrisy. And that is where I have had so many conversations with older people my age saying, go back, go listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the emotional wherewithal to take it upon yourself, this is where I see we're getting stuck, because my generation doesn't want to be told. They just want to dismiss it all. It makes them uncomfortable to have the uncomfortable conversations. And it's these kinds of conversations that we have to have in order to break down these horrific generational patterns. We're all human beings. We're all just wanting to live in peace. And when I see this level of just hate and divisiveness continuing on, it just keeps pushing me forward to speak my mind and to call it out. And I know that people don't like to be called out on their BS,
Mm-hmm.
but at what point do you stop contributing to the BS and take a step back? Because I'll have to say what RFK said the other day about people that are autistic and on the spectrum and all of that, that right now is getting a lot of pushback. Why? Because he just put the pain on a lot of the white people out there. Wait a minute, I'm autistic, my kids are autistic. Don't say that about me. Until it affects the white people, that's when they get riled up. Hey, and that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be the case. If you can't try to stand in someone else's shoes and actually say, well, don't talk about my autistic kid that way. Okay, well, take it a step further. Don't talk about our Black brothers and sisters out there either. And don't talk about our immigrants that way. So in the white world mind, it's always about them. It's that entitlement. And so until it affects me, hey, I'm just going to do my thing. You guys can all go work it out. It's like digging your heels in the sand. You're not going to go. We're not going anywhere until you change that perspective.
So with all that said, with how people are viewing that particular performance, let's go back one more time. You said something that we really didn't talk about in depth. We used the word trauma. We used the word boomer, Gen X. We mentioned a lot of this, but we didn't talk about your trauma. What was the trauma that you went through?
So the traumas that I went through were the emotional disconnect that was in my family, and I come back to this saying that a lot of us that came from larger families, we weren't raised. Our parents just had us. So there's a big difference, and this is what I try to, talk to my younger adults that I mentor or what have you. There's a difference between having children and raising children.
Right.
And a lot of boomers and Gen Xers, we raised ourselves. So there wasn't, and again, this goes back to, this is traumatizing. If there's no emotional bond, if there's no connection, think about having to be raised by siblings. Siblings don't have the emotional wherewithal. They don't have the mental intelligence or the capacity to be raising children. So when you're in this household, these are these little nuances where it is traumatizing to us. And if you're on the spectrum, or if you have any of these other different societal, visions,
right?
Each person is unique. So what could traumatize this child over here may not traumatize this one. And young adults are now realizing that, because we're all so unique. So what was traumatizing to me were the fact that I was the youngest of 6, and they were much older. Mm-hmm. So I was raised by siblings, and the 2 closest siblings were very emotionally abusive and physically abusive. Mm-hmm. And at 7 years old, one of my brothers held me over Hoover Dam.
Wow.
And was going and was doing this up and down like he was going to drop me over Hoover Dam. I was 7 years old. So that is so ingrained in me as far as the lack of safety.
Yeah.
So when we're in a family where you don't have a safety net, you don't feel a sense of security,
Mm-hmm.
where you've got verbal abuse going on, emotional abuse going on, physical abuse going on. Sorry, this is where I'm looking at my generation. We had a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of it unresolved. I was sexually assaulted at the age of 12 by my sister's boyfriend, who later became her husband, and she divorced. And then you go into this rabbit hole.
Mm.
So from that point, you know, now in hindsight, I'm looking at all of these different things. And if you're familiar with the ACEs, it's the Adverse Childhood Experience Test,
Mm-hmm.
ACE. If you go into there, you can get it online, and there's specific questions, and you can get rated. And my score was an 8 out of 10. Well, 8 out of 10 is that's you're pretty traumatized.
Yeah.
But there's categories. It's just not an easy, it's easy questions, but it's very distinct. And statistically, people that are in prison have a ACEs score of 6 or higher. So this just goes to show where we are. So if you look at society, who is the population that's in there the most? Well, it's brothers and sisters of color. Doesn't mean that they were extremely traumatized. No, now you're bringing race into what's in prison. But when you are recognized as being traumatized, and you've got scales now, you've got evidence of the trauma. This can also be validating. Mm-hmm. So there were many. I could not talk about my trauma,
right?
Because it's a stigma in society. And this is what I've learned from all of you don't want to throw your family under the bus. Yeah, that was pretty bad what my aunties and aunties did. And again, these are the hard conversations that we need to have.
And it's so funny because we have people on the show, and they will literally protect family secrets and not realizing that, what, those secrets put you in that fucking situation.
Thank you very much. Because see, this is, and that right there, what are you doing? You are creating the generational trauma and the patterns. You cannot sweep abuse under the rug anymore. We can't, because when you sweep abuse under the rug, you're sweeping that person's history under the rug. You are literally dismissing those horrific situations. Why do you think white people don't want to talk about the racism? Because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Well, you know what? Too bad, so sad. We have to move past that. And going into the familiar, because I'm letting you know, and this is my thing with the human conduit, we have more in common than what is dividing us.
Yeah.
And when you have those intimate conversations and you say, hey, what's it like? I've had those. I've had that. I've asked Black people in my life, what has it felt like for you to be a Black person, a Black man, a Black woman in this country? And you know what I get? I get, wow, I haven't had a white person ask me that. Well, you know what? I'm asking you because I want to know.
What do they say to you? What do they say to you? What's some of the remarks?
They're a lot of times it sticks like, well, I don't know what to say. And then with conversation, they open up and they talk about how they have felt less than. They feel as though they're not being heard. They feel as though, it's like they can't control it. Mm-hmm. They will give me intimate like stories, or, I never really thought this way, and I wasn't raised that way, but why are white people raised that way? I get that one a lot. Like, we just want to love everybody. But when it comes back to this, it's not that, because white people are raised with this entitlement that we are here. We're better than everybody else.
Well, the entitlement happened during the 1700s, during the Bacon Rebellion, war and before that, when the word white first surfaced, the exaggeration law is what it's called, exaggeration law, where the word white was put into law and protected by law. But my question, before we wrap up, my question goes a little bit deeper than this. I have some friends, and I asked them this question. No, they told me this. This was on season 1, and you talked about we have to realize that we are all the same. The only thing that separates us is a bullshit word called white. Mm-hmm. Because back in the day, we were only recognized by your heritage, where you came from, the region in which you came from. If you was Africana, then you was considered Africana. If you was Roman, you was considered Roman. And if you was Greek, blah, 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 blah. But with that said, do you think, no, let me go back. How do we fix, in your opinion, how do we fix a situation where comfortability for white people is, I don't want to really talk about it?
Well, I look at it as all fear-based, because I think a lot of people just don't even know how to handle their own emotions, mm-hmm. let alone another person's feelings.
Right.
Again, this goes back to, alexithymia is huge. You don't know how to put words and emotions and feelings together. That's a huge thing that's out there. But when it comes to, and it's really hard, when it comes to, I think, white people having these hard conversations, it's because I believe there's a lot of shame and guilt involved with that.
From ancestral heritage and family yes. bloodlines and trees. And I agree with that 100%, because like I said, in season 1, I had my friends on, and this is exactly what they said on the episode. We love you, Andre, blah, 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 but we would never change places with you because right. of the color of your skin.
And absolutely so. And because this is why, that I go back to this hypocrisy, because, and I keep saying this, white people are fearful of the reality because they see your talent. They see your resilience. They see the strength. They see it because they never had to earn it or work for it. It was just there for them. And when intelligence can stand back, and I can look at all of my friends that have achieved so much, regardless, because they're Black people. Sorry, this is what white is afraid of. This is what white nationalism is all about. This white Christian nationalism is just another way of, vandalizing and hijacking Christian. It's all white supremacy. That's all this is right now. And to have my white friends that are saying they're Christian, okay, well, that's great. But over here, what is happening is not Christian. This is how they've sugarcoated it. This is how they've preached it out into the world of my generation, saying, we know you're a Christian, and this is the way it's going to be now. We need to put everybody in their places. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? And this is why going back to Kendrick, when you think of him, when you listen to his lyrics, when you really pay attention to the message, the 40 acres, the Uncle Sam, you know what? Yeah, because you know why? Words and actions don't match. And
it's I'm gonna go here with this. You have different people at that event. I was talking to a friend of mine just recently, a few minutes ago, and she gave her insight on the Super Bowl. And she said, white people just wanted to be entertained.
There
I
you go.
said, and that's what I said. I'm gonna wrap this part up. I'm gonna say you're probably right on that. You're 100% right on that. You're
I
100%
was gonna
right.
say, no, you're 100%
Because
right on that. Yeah.
that's what we're known for. Entertainment. That's shake and dance. That's, hey, how you doing, Jimmy? We're known for the entertainers to the white people. But there's another class of people who also saw it. And those were the people that was like, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand the message. I don't know what he's doing or what this is about. Then you had the other people that might have said, well, he's glorifying drug users. He's glorifying gang violence. So you had so many different constructs in the matrix. Then you had the ones that, like yourself, that might have been what we call awakened, that saw the symbolism. Now, let's go deeper, because I shared this with my friend. It's hard to, they said it wasn't the appropriate place to demonstrate such an event of words. I was like, what better place?
I agree.
Because it's like this. To awaken in people to what this country is doing and what it has done has to be on a stage of a magnitude where people can see it. It's not, I don't think that he worried about who got the message. The situation was that he made it a conversation piece and
Absolutely.
hopefully open up the doors for the ones who didn't know how to address a situation. Like I just said, my friend said, I love you to death, Dre, but I would never change places with you. That was heartfelt for me, because that tells me, you know what I'm going through.
Right.
You won't change places with me. So that's hurting for me, because you know what? You can care less. I'm your friend, but you know what? You would never change places with me. Dude, that was like taking a knife and stabbing in my chest. You know what I go through every day. You know what people of color, people of any nationality, any person that's being discriminated against, you know what they go through. But your questions to me is, I would never change places with you.
Yeah.
Right. So you can say that wasn't a good place to showcase that event, but it was a place to make a conversational piece through the social media. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how you came on the show. That's exactly how we got to where we got to today. Before we wrap up, what was some of the parts about that particular performance that really resonated with you and you felt should have resonated with the world?
Well, right off the bat, when they had the, Uncle Sam, I knew, okay, we're going to go into some deep messaging here. And that's where, like I said earlier, I was reading the lyrics. I was watching the performance. I was getting it, but I needed to do my research. Mm-hmm. Because I was being entertained.
Yeah.
but I knew.
Right.
Because I knew his genius style. I knew that there are messages in there, and I knew in my heart and soul that he was reaching out and having those uncomfortable, in your face moments. Yeah. And sure enough, when I went back and started looking at all this, I'm going, yeah, because what I read is that he was warned, don't go there, don't do this, don't make it this. And he stuck to his guns.
Yeah.
And see, this is exactly the resilience and the strength that for the most part, white people are intimidated by, because every success that I see with our Black brothers and sisters is because they created it for them. They created it for them. Your success is because it comes from your passion. But with white people, especially for the most part in my generation, it was handed to them. There wasn't a lot of working. I know of so many people here in Vegas that were given great jobs 20, 30, 40 years ago. They've now retired because they knew who they knew.
Mhm.
Vegas was the time where you could get a job. It was all about who you know, and it still is. But to get to the point of where I see the success of people of color that scares the crap out of white people, because we know you worked hard to get to those points of success.
How do we change before we wrap up? Let me let people know you're not here to talk bad about any race. You're bringing what is called a moment that people need to really think about what's going on. And my hat's off to you for going and taking an event like the Super Bowl halftime performance and really digging deeper into its meaning instead of being entertained. You took the entertainment and went. But my question is, before we wrap up, what's your end game here? What is your message that you're trying to resonate to people? And what do we need to do to come together to recognize everyone, that because we're all connected, no matter
Right.
what the color of our skin is?
Well, thank you for this opportunity, because this can lead me right into my segue. First of all, you're correct. I'm not here to bash white people. I'm not here to create a base of anything other than awareness. Be aware of where we are. And that's what that halftime show was all about. This is where we are. So I'm not here to bash anybody. If I can stand in my whiteness and call it out on the BS, I will do that until I take my last breath. But my point on all of this is, because this is the first time you and I communicating. I am the human conduit. I connect people. This is what I do. And about 8 months ago, 10 months ago, I created my tokens of love. I don't know if you can see them.
Mm-hmm.
I call them my tokens of love. And they say on them, you are loved. And on the back side, it has my website, because you know what I'm doing? Too many people do not feel seen, heard, valued. I don't care if you're white, black, brown. I don't care where you come from. If you're LGBTQ, because I work with a lot of LGBTQ, you know what? Everybody wants to be seen and heard. So I give these out randomly. I'll give them out at the gym. I'll give them out to wherever I'm at. If I see someone and I kind of think they're having a bad day, I'll give them one.
Mm-hmm.
And what this has done, especially to my brothers and sisters of color, this tells them that you are loved, because I believe, and it's every single time I give it to someone of color and say, not all white people are racists. On your bad day, here's my token of love. There are white people out there that love you, appreciate you. We see you, we hear you. You are valued. So I've set up the Human Conduit website where people can go in there. And if you're not vocal like me, but you want to share your story, it's in there. You can go in, and I've got different topics. Are you autistic? Are you a person of color? Are you LGBTQ? Tell us your story, because it's when we have these conversations, this is how we're going to break down these barriers. When we can express what we've been through, who we are, how we feel, this is our connection. Because I'll tell you right now, this exterior does not define us, but it does in this world. And it shouldn't. We are all human beings. And when we can get past this, I hate to have to call out this whiteness. I wish I didn't have to. But until more of this gets into the game and shows the grit that it's going to take to pull this country out from the depths of hell, is where I see it. We all need to have these conversations. And if you're a writer, if you just want to put your words and your story on paper, there's your link. There's your source.
What is the
And
link
from
that?
there,
What's the link, baby girl, that they can reach you at? What's the website?
you can go right to thehumanconduit.com, and it's sharing stories. This is where I want people to share their stories with me. If they don't want to write it and they want to talk, they can reach out. But it's got a link. You can choose your category. You can go into the form. You fill out the form. and boom, there you go. Share your story, because I'll tell you, we have so much in common, but it's still this exterior that's dividing us. And we've got to stop that.
Tess, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the show and give us your point of view. And I do mean your point of view. Make sure you guys click and follow her. And all it takes is one click of a button to change somebody's life and make a difference in this world. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast
Much love to you.
Crayton Show.